Hi, everyone. This is Debi Ronca, your host, and welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast. Each and every week, we come together to hear another personal story of someone's transition, their healing, and their transformation. And it's within these stories that we learn together more about the purpose and the power of the transitions in our lives. Well, today, my guest is Justin Long, and he is here to share with us his book, The Righteous Rage of a 10-year-old boy, which covers his journey of an incredibly abusive childhood, but yet also how he has found healing, new purpose, and vision for his life. Justin is an author, a podcast host, and the hospital administrator for Spring Hill Equine Veterinary Clinic. Justin is passionate about the power of positive culture, mental health, and effective teamwork, and the values he learned the hard way after struggling with insecurity and a toxic environment early in his life. Today, he's a dedicated advocate for helping young people thrive both personally and professionally. So, Justin, welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast.
Thank you, Debbie. It's great to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. And first, I just want to say, I've read parts of your book, and I am so incredibly sorry for what you suffered, what you had to go through as a child. And it was so unfair. And my heart goes out to you. And yet at the same time, I so applaud your courage, your heart, and your spirit that, and your resilience to find healing and then write a book that you are now using to really help others that may have walked in your very shoes. So I just want to bless you in your courage and resilience for creating beauty out of ashes, as they say, for what you've gone through.
Well, I appreciate that. But I think that it's everyone's instinct to feel bad for me, but I don't regret anything that I've been through because all of it has created the perspective that I have today so that I can appreciate the life that I have. So I can see both sides of that for sure.
Well, and that's so powerful what you shared because we do have the choice, and you have made that healthy choice to choose what you could gain from it, even though it seemed like there was not much to gain. And yet you found something in that and realize now how you are defined today. That's
That's right.
beautiful. Thank you for
That's right.
that. Well, why don't you share with us your story and, what brought you to writing your book?
I like to say that my story started when I was 32, and that was 2008. That was a year that I got sober. Decided that the alcohol wasn't doing for me what I needed it to do anymore. And at that point, I was very miserable. I had a job that I didn't like. Was in a relationship that I didn't want to be in. Um, Everything in my life was just bad, and I didn't understand why. I didn't have any self-awareness. I didn't have any of the tools that I have today at that point, right? I was just living a reactionary life and using
Mm,
alcohol and cigarettes to manage the way that I felt about myself and the world to get through one day to the next. And that wasn't working for me anymore. But early in sobriety, I found a mentor that helped start me down the road of self awareness and self discovery and figuring out the why behind the what and
mm,
why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. I went there trying to find some tools to help manage my drinking because I felt like that was part of my problem. And I learned quickly that alcohol was never my problem, that alcohol was my solution. And the problem was the way that I felt about myself. And that understanding why, to getting to the roots of that and understanding why I feel the way about myself that I do is what took me all the way back to early childhood. Parts of that I got with my mentor, and parts of that I got later in trauma therapy. But what I came to understand was that both of my parents were very emotionally dysfunctional people. My mom's parents were, well, I'd say her mother wanted her to be the perfect little girl that she could show off in sewing circle to all of her friends,
oh,
right? And my
right.
mom had scoliosis and her spine was twisted up and she had a big
Mm,
metal framework in her back and she was not that kid, but her little sister was. And so my
uh-oh.
mom was abandoned by her mother in favor of her little sister and ostracized in her own family. And my dad was the oldest child of a workaholic who was never satisfied with anything and probably still dealing with trauma from his childhood and his dad. And my dad became a workaholic, and neither of my parents took their traumas out through alcohol like I did. My dad went with work, and he felt like if he wasn't working or if he wasn't sleeping, he ought to be working, right? And he probably shouldn't be sleeping. He should always be working. And I think that he spent his entire life trying to get his dad's approval by working harder and harder and harder. So I got caught up in that with him. My mom went with extreme religiosity. And I think she felt like if she believed hard enough and got in the right church and was active enough and prayed hard enough and subjugated herself enough, that eventually God would take notice and fix her, right? And of course, that's not how that works either.
Right.
So those were my two primary caregivers. And my dad, I think, had more impact on me that I was aware of, because my dad was the disciplinarian. So he would go to work and come home and check out the chores list that he had left for me to do that day. And we would go through it together. One of the examples I use in the book is stacking firewood. And we would go inspect the firewood stack. And if there were any pieces sticking out the front or the back, or if it wasn't perfectly flat across the top, then I would get a SWAT for each one of those things that was wrong with the firewood stack. And then we would go on to the next thing and inspect that. And basically every day I would work really hard. And then my dad would come home and spank me for all the stuff that I wasn't quite perfect. And I understand now that part of that was him trying to drive me to be better. And part of it was him just channeling this imperfect, or the standard of perfection that there's no way that I could meet, which is the same thing that his dad did to him, right? But in the moment, all I knew was that I'm going to stack the firewood when I get home from school, and then I'm going to do my homework, and then my dad's going to come home, and I'm going to get my spanking, and then it'll be supper time, and then we'll work on the car or whatever tonight's project is. Like that was my day. That was my life. And sometimes my mom would be my protector. And sometimes, if I would cry to her about the injustice of what's going on, she would just sell me out to my dad, and I would get another spanking for trying to, work them against one another or whatever. So I couldn't trust either one of them, which meant I really didn't have a safe place to be in the world. And, as I got older, I rebelled against my dad really hard. Not quite to the point of ever just outright defying him and not doing what I was told, but I resented him so strongly. And I would mouth off to him and fight him tooth and nail on every single thing that we did. I would always do it his way in the end because I was afraid not to. But it was, every day was a battle. All day, every day was a battle. And so I had all of these insecurities that I formed because of my relationship with my parents. And I didn't recognize any of it at the time, but I launched out into the world believing that no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be good enough. And my mom taught me that I could be thrown away at any time. She was not a disciplinarian, but one of her go-to moves to punish me was to make me pull the big trash dumpster in from the curb and pull the trash bags out of it and sit inside that and wait till my dad got home from work to give me a spanking for whatever I did, right? So I spent a lot of time sitting in the trash can thinking about why I couldn't keep my mouth shut or why I couldn't do whatever it was, beating myself up because I knew that sitting in the trash can was a probable outcome. And I did the thing anyway because I was an 8-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid or, it just, the world was stacked against me as far as I could see. And I blamed myself because I understood the potential outcomes to all my things, and then I did the things anyway. So I felt like I didn't have any self-control. And as an adult, I found alcohol pretty early. I found alcohol in high school, and I left home as soon as I could after high school and went to the Army, and alcohol went with me there. And alcohol made me feel great about who I was for the first time in my life, right? Like that was something that every time I drank, I was with people who accepted me for who I was, and I had a great time and I felt good. And that was a novel feeling for me. And I clung to that. Like I clung desperately to that. And that's why by the time I got into my 30s, like I hated myself because I believed that my value as a human being was what I got from my parents, which was
Mhm.
zero, right? And
Right.
so alcohol made me feel okay early on, and it follows that law of diminishing returns, and it worked less and less and less. And by the time I was in my 30s, I just hated myself no matter what. I couldn't drink it away anymore. And so I was in a really scary spot, and I didn't know what to do with that. But when my therapist helped me understand that the way that I feel about myself is an inside job, that I don't draw my value from outside sources, that changed everything for me, right? Like that was the
Yeah.
beginning of realizing that there is another way to be, there's another way to feel, there's another way to identify who I am. And that's when everything in my life began to change.
At what point did you finally surrender to the fact that you needed therapy?
It was a slow process for me. I grew up in the 80s in Oklahoma under a dad that didn't believe in getting help from anybody for anything, right?
Right.
And that mentality of you do everything yourself and you never show weakness, and just the common toxic masculinity BS that is our society, right? That a
Mm-hmm.
man doesn't ever ask for help, especially from a therapist. The only time you would ever go to therapy is to save your marriage, and probably not even then, right? And if you
Right.
did, you don't tell your friends about it.
It's like a
So,
crutch. You don't want to have that
right.
crutch, right?
That's just it's a shameful thing for a
Yeah.
man to get therapy. So I had to get past that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I had to change my mindset on almost everything, right? The My mentor Roland he helped me understand myself and how I had operated in a way that just was blew my mind. He forced me to challenge all of my beliefs and examine them one at a time, and figure out who I really am and what I really believe. And in going through that process, I realized that almost everything that I held up as my mask that I showed the world as a persona on who Justin Long is had nothing to do with who I really am, right? I was trying to be who you wanted me to be. I was trying to be who my dad wanted me to be. I was trying to be who
Mm-hmm.
everybody else wanted to be at the same time, no matter how much all of those things have conflict with one another. And none of it had anything to do with who I wanted me to be, because I felt like if I like it, I need to reject that because it's going to get me in a place I don't want to be, right? Like
Right.
everything I was into, my dad rejected.
Mm.
And I never understood as a child that my dad was my dad was really good at physical things, right? Like he was pretty good at being a carpenter and a mechanic and all these hands-on things. I was a thinker. I was an intellectual kid. I liked reading books. I liked art. I like all that kind of stuff. But my dad had no time for any of that, and so he shut me down on that, and that taught me to shut myself down on that. So I learned, no, if anything that I'm into, I have to hide that from the world and be ashamed of that because that's not who I should be. So
Yeah.
Roland helped pry all of that stuff off of the surface so that I could get down to who I really am and what I'm actually interested in. And it was shocking to me, and I don't know why, but it was shocking to me to find out that I love art and writing and music and all of these things that make me feel like a complete person when I'm engaging in that, right? Like I'm creating. I love creating. And I had like no wonder I hated everything about my life, because I had cut all of that kind of stuff out of it and filled my life with things that I don't like to try to get someone else's approval.
Yeah. How
And
could you
like,
ever know who you were? Because what you
right.
did do, you were punished for, and you didn't know who you were, so you were trying to be everybody else, but you never felt fulfilled inside. It had to be such a confusing time in your life.
It was terrible. And I really felt silly about myself when I realized how much of everything that I do was to get my dad's approval. And at that point, my dad had been dead for 7 or 8 years.
Oh,
I'm living my life trying to get a pat on the back that it's not even possible for me to get. Even if,
yeah.
you know, like everything else out the window. It's a ridiculous notion, but it's because I was living unconsciously and just not thinking about anything that I was doing. It's a very unintentional life. And I think about that.
Mhm.
I see so many people living that way. Like we're just have no sense of direction and purpose and trying to, be more than we are and grow. And that lack of self-awareness, I don't know how you have any sort of a satisfactory life without self-awareness. I really like the more I have learned about myself, the more it has allowed me to like take charge of my life and arrange it in a way that is satisfying to me. And it's so drastically different than it was then, right? That
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that I could have gone on much longer, alcohol or no alcohol. I couldn't have gone on much longer the way I was living because it's against everything that is on the inside.
Absolutely. And you know that the power of the awareness is that we can't change what we're not aware of,
That's
right?
right.
So that
That's right.
awareness, when that comes, we begin to, I guess, take ownership, become aware, recognize, wait, there's a root and a reason behind the way that I'm acting, behaving, feeling. What is that?
Hmm.
Awareness is such a gift to be able to go deeper within ourselves, to get to the root of why I am showing up in my adult life this way. And we all do that. We can just float through life and never be aware of our present or why we are the way we are. We just accept it rather than investigate it.
Right. And I see so many people, that at the end of their life who have just that object in motion that tends to stay in motion. They never got acted on by the outside force. And it makes me so grateful that I did because I think as human beings, the way our brain is wired is to think as little as possible to save energy because our brain requires a lot of energy to think, right? And so
Right.
we just go through life on autopilot and we miss out on
Mhm.
everything. And yeah, we didn't burn 27,000 calories, but was it really a worthwhile trade? I don't think so.
No, I agree. So I love that you met this mentor. So what was the process? How did you begin to dismantle the lies that you believed about yourself? I'm sure you felt rejected. I'm sure you felt neglected. I'm sure you felt abandoned. I'm sure you walked in shame. I mean, all of this was placed upon you by your parents. And so how did you dismantle those lies?
It was it was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done because at the surface it's the monumental task, right? It's eating the
Yes.
elephant. But
Mm-hmm.
it started for me. It started with a steak, and
Hmm.
one of the things I did in early sobriety to try to not drink and fill up my time was I started playing guitars with a buddy of mine that I worked with, and that turned into a band. And we had played a show over in Savannah, Georgia, one day, a Saturday, and then afterwards we went out to a steakhouse to kind of celebrate because that was our biggest achievement up to that point, right? As a
Right.
band, and I was very early in sobriety at that point. I was still trying to figure out all of the things, right? And I had most of my dad's beliefs hanging on me. And one of those was that a steak ought to be burned to a crisp. And my dad, we didn't eat steak very often when I was a kid because we never had money. But on the rare occasion that we did, my dad burned it to a crisp, charred on the
Oh
outside,
gosh.
dark brown on the inside. And so I grew up thinking that's how you eat a steak, right? And
Hmm.
I made fun of people eating their raw steaks and stuff, and never occurred to me that maybe they were right. But we went to this steakhouse, and they would not burn my steak, of course, because they're
Yeah.
reasonable people.
Insults to the
And
chef.
right, and we had a come to Jesus meeting at the side of the table with the waitress and the chef and my friend, and they convinced me to try a medium steak. And I finally relented and I tried it and it was amazing and
Mm.
it blew my mind. It's like my dad was wrong about steak, and that put a little crack out into the ice and allowed me to consider maybe my dad was wrong about other things too, right? Even
Oh,
though I had all of these resentments against him, and I hated him and all the things that I still didn't question him. I still believed, because all of that was imprinted on me when I was so young, I still believed that he was always right, because that's what he pounded into my head, that he is always
Sure.
right, never question. And so that stake like opened a little window into the possibility that my dad could be fallible. And that allowed me to start looking at other things that I believed that I inherited from my parents. And once I opened that door and walked through it, it was like the floodgates were opened, and I suddenly had permission to examine everything that I believe. But I think I needed that positive experience of having been wrong about something and finding out that changing is for the better, right? Like
That's good.
enjoying a medium steak, which has turned into medium rare steak, is way better than a burned steak. And so that was a positive experience in changing one of my beliefs. And
Right.
then, I was able to have some positive experiences in other beliefs that I changed. And I changed my beliefs about everything. And some of them I inherited from my parents, and some of them I just drafted from people around me when I was trying to be someone that I wasn't. But I had to change my beliefs about people who are a different color than me, people who are a different sexual orientation than me, and
Hmm.
what being a man means, and what being a woman means, and gender roles, and all of these things that I didn't believe in, but I was living that, right?
Hmm.
And so one thing at a time turned into 20 things at a time. And then it just became a way of life eventually, is that when I come up against something that I want to question, like, is this me, or is this just an artifact that I've been carrying around that I need to examine, right? And I think in the beginning, once you give yourself permission to have been wrong about something and change your mind, that is a super liberating freedom to change everything. And that's what I needed to do.
It's like you started to peek beyond the veil, everything that
Hmm.
has been hidden all of those years that were forming and shaping you into a different person. So, what did you obviously you discovered that you love art and creativity. Were there other things about your personality, about your emotions that you discovered about yourself that were hidden or dormant during therapy? Like what resurrected? What came forth?
Oh, a lot. One of the things that I never knew is that people have personality types, and there are
Mhm.
different personality types. And you can't, like, you can pretend to be something else, or think a different way than you are, but you can't change your personality type from one thing to another. And I think that is, I always felt like there was something wrong with me because I didn't think the same way that my dad thought, right?
Right.
And I wasn't good at
Hmm.
the things that he was good at. And I think realizing that I am this personality type, and that's okay. It's different from that, but different doesn't mean bad. That gave me permission to be who I am and embrace the things that I like as I discover them, right? And and um, I think that learning how to be honest with myself, and then to be honest with other people about who I am, was, I don't I don't want to say liberating, but when you don't have to carry around the mask and hold up the lies anymore, like, there is a huge freedom in that. And
Yeah.
but it took me a little while to develop the confidence to be who I am openly, right? And to not be ashamed, because I'd carry shame about my identity my entire life, and learning how to set that shame down. That's where the EMDR therapy came in, and changing how I believe about myself, and changing the emotions that I have tied to my childhood memories. That changed everything for me and allowed me to be confident in, I'm Justin Long, and I paint paintings, and I write songs, and play the guitar, and sing, and I write books, and I'm smart, and I'm okay with those things, and I don't care if you're okay with them or not, because your opinion is not what gives me value. My opinion is what gives me value, right? to get to that point, I mean, that was years. It was years of therapy and coaching and practicing and trying and failing and falling. But getting to that allowed me to then build on that as I grow into my capacity and try to figure out who it is that I want to become. I know who I am today. Who do I want to be tomorrow? What do I need to do to get there? Like that all requires the foundation of realizing what is important and what isn't, right? What do I
Mm-hmm.
need to give energy to and what can I ignore? And I was wrong about that most of my life too. I gave all my energy to managing other people's opinion and I ignored all of my needs. And when you flip that around, it's amazing what you can get done, but it's also amazing how much better life feels when you are putting your energies into growing yourself rather than managing other people's opinions, because other people aren't thinking
Yeah.
about you that much anyway, right? It never occurred to me that everybody around me wasn't just thinking about me all the time, and what an idiot I was when I said that thing 3 weeks ago. Like nobody remembers that. Nobody thinks about that for a minute except for me, right? I'm the only one obsessing about it.
Well, that is the power of rejection. There's something about rejection that makes us think that everybody else is thinking about us. And when
Hmm.
we walk into the room, everybody's rejecting us. It makes us think the opposite, really, of what's going on. So I could see
Absolutely.
why, yeah, and that's a struggle for a lot of people. And, unmet needs, we are supposed to have needs met physically, emotionally, spiritually by our parents or our caregivers. I mean, when they're not met, that tank's empty, right? And
Hmm.
like as you were sharing, we reach out for other things to fill that empty space. We look to other people to value who we are. And yet it's never authentic, is it?
And it's never enough.
And
It's
it's
never,
never
ever enough.
enough. It just keeps seeping through. It never holds.
Yeah.
And so the EMDR, so that was a big part of your healing transformation.
Oh, it was 90% of it, as it turned out. There was 10 years of foundation work that took place to get me to EMDR, but EMDR was 90% of the life change for me. And I think it's so powerful because of how it works. Because this is science stuff. This is the amygdala holding on to emotions, but it's not an active thinking part of the brain. So you can't just go dive into
Hmm.
your amygdala, right?
Right.
But um, going back to childhood experiences with my therapist, going through this EMDR experience, um, we'll use the firewood pile as an example again. Like me at, I think I was 43, 44 at the time going through therapy, but like 44-year-old Justin going back to 1983 and standing beside the firewood pile with 8-year-old Justin and my dad and looking at what's happening there with an adult perspective and all the things that I know now, and recognizing, yeah, 8-year-old Justin is beating himself up because he knows there's 6 pieces of wood sticking out of the pile that he could have done a better job on, but he didn't want to unstack the wood once he realized that they were out because that would have taken longer. And so, but he felt trapped in a situation that he didn't have a good outcome no matter what, and he went with the easiest solution, and now he's going to suffer the consequences. So he's standing there beating himself up. I can look at that as adult Justin and see that child Justin, 8-year-old Justin, stacked the firewood. The house was heated. We were never cold. Like I did the thing every day. And my dad was punishing me because he's trying to get approval from his dad for stuff that happened 50 years before that, right? Who was
Mm.
trying to please his dad. Like that generational cycle of abuse that gets handed down. My dad's just reenacting all that because he's trying to feel better about who he is because he's probably rejecting himself on the inside. It has
Right.
nothing to do with 8-year-old Justin and his inability to stack a perfect firewood stack because the firewood could have been jumbled in a big heap like it just fell out of the sky and it wouldn't change anything on the outcome of keeping the house warm, right? That perfect stack is my dad trying to feel better about who he is as a person. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I see that situation as 8-year-old me did all the things, endured a bunch of BS along with it, but did all of the hard work, never gave up, would show up tomorrow and do it all again, knowing he was going to get a spanking again. Like, I was incredible. I was amazing. I did that day after day, year after year. And with the EMDR, like, I'm changing my understanding of who I was at 8 years old. I'm changing the emotions that I have tied to the firewood moment from shame to pride. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can feel positive about who I was and what I did, and know that all of those things, whether it was the firewood or me digging a ditch that wasn't perfectly straight for a water line, or pounding nails out of boards for a construction project that would never happen. All of these things, bringing my dad the wrong wrench because I didn't know which one was he wanted. None of those things had anything to do with me and who I am as a person. And when I was able to recognize that with situation after situation after situation, it changed my whole perspective of who I have always been, which changes my perspective of who I am now, right? And all
Mm-hmm.
of those insecurities that are formed because of those negative self-beliefs, suddenly they don't have teeth anymore, right?
Yeah.
I still have those insecurities because I've been trained to have those knee-jerk reactions for 45, 50 years now. But those insecurities have a power of two instead of a power of 10. And most of the
Yes.
time I can recognize when they're being triggered and be like, oh, that's a false feeling. That's not a real thing. And I can do a manual override and move on with a positive frame of mind instead of getting sucked into the pit of despair over something that's not real, right?
Right.
That fundamental change in who I see myself as changes everything. It changes the way that I feel about myself, yes, but it also changes the way that I show up in the world. It changes the way that I interact with people. It changes the way that I react to things. Like, I don't need to defend myself every time somebody says something that might be negative about me or offers a criticism or shows me that I could have done something better. Like, I used to have to fight to the death over that stuff. Now I realize, no, that's not a character judgment on me, and that's not them saying that I'm a giant piece of crap, which I secretly agree with. That's them offering a constructive criticism. Or even if it is a negative slam against me, it's okay because my value doesn't come from that person's opinion. And that that changes everything about my life. Everything.
Yes. Oh, I mean, the whole lens has been washed clean.
Right.
And I can see how difficult it is to be triggered. And when those triggers come, you sound like you really do have a process to dismantle that trigger and reframe it.
I do, absolutely. And it's one of those things that I have to practice every day.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, when I first started this stuff, I would realize 3 days later that, oh, that was me reacting to something that's not real. That's based on a false belief. And over time, I got it down to 2 days, and then one day, and sometimes I can catch it an hour afterwards. Sometimes I can catch it 10 minutes afterwards. Sometimes I catch it in the heat of the moment before my mouth
Mm.
even opens, and that's a super win. I feel great about those times,
Oh,
and
absolutely. High
because
five.
right. It's not just people at the grocery store that I'm interacting with. I have a team at our business. My wife and I own a vet clinic. Um, I have to, and which I believe very much in positive culture, and I have to make sure that I'm not negatively reacting to things and being belligerent to my staff when I'm trying to help them grow into better people, right? I have to lead by example on that stuff. And it's also my wife. If my wife says something that triggers me, I don't want to attack my wife. She's my favorite
Right.
person on the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in previous relationships in the past, I was very negative. I don't know how people were ever in a relationship with me because I hated myself, and that made me react negatively to everything, right? I can't imagine being in a relationship with somebody that was the way that I was. But I don't want to bring that into my marriage. My wife has never seen me that way, and I would like to keep that, right? So I
Yeah.
focus every day on catching those triggers when they happen or as soon after as possible instead of dragging everybody down into the pit of despair with me.
Oh, and I love that. And I can just hear your heart. You want to give others what you did not receive.
That's right.
As you are building teams and creating workplace environments, working with leaders, You want to give them the value, the worth, the celebration of what they do and who they are as a result of what you did not receive. And I think that's a beautiful, powerful thing.
Well, I think about how different my life could have been if I had known the stuff that I know now
Yeah.
sooner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said in the beginning, I don't regret the path that my life took. It was all necessary to get me where I am today. But if I can help someone else head off the direction that they're going at 21 or 25 or 30 instead of 40 or 50 or 60, that's that's a dramatic difference in their quality of life. And that ripple effect that you said, because they're interacting with people, they're going to go on and have families, and like it
Mm-hmm.
just keeps going and into infinity, right? And I have a team of amazing people, and I am in awe of how much self-awareness and dignity and class that they have at 20 years old, 22, 23. A lot of our technicians are spending a year or two with us in between college and veterinary school to gain experience, right? And I
Wonderful.
look at where they are at 22, 23 years old and where I was at when I was 22 and 23. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a profound difference. And so everything that I can contribute to their positive growth, one of the things that we provide is therapy benefits. Anybody on our team that wants to go to therapy, we're going to pay for it because the
Great.
better they are, the better we are as a business, right? And it's opening up them to the idea that it's okay to ask for help and get perspective. And most of them take me up on it, which is really impressive to me. I don't know that I would have when I was 23. I probably wouldn't have. But if the right person that I respected had guided me into that, it might have been very different for me. So I am trying to be that person for the young people in my life and our business that I can help them take that out into the working world once they go become doctors and run their own practices and create great cultures and provide mental health support for the people on their team. So that's my goal.
No, that's a fabulous goal. And I'm a firm believer that when we speak life, we can change a life.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
the power of our words. And what you're doing now is you're using the power of your words to impart life to these young people around you, so that they can be a better version of themselves. And that makes you a very compassionate, strong, and emotionally intelligent leader.
I'm getting there. I'm a whole lot better than I was.
We all are on the journey together. But like you
That's
said,
right.
we're getting aware and we're like, okay, what can I change? What can I work on this week? And that's why I love reflection and just looking back and seeing how I personally show up in situations. How could I have done that better? Where did my
Hmm.
emotions override the right thing to do? Why were my emotions so loud and uncontrolled? So
Mm. Yes.
our emotions can get us in trouble.
Are you familiar with the HALT inventory? HALT?
I am not. Tell me.
That's a great tool. I got this early
Okay.
in sobriety, but the HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired.
Okay.
And the idea is that if you're feeling out of sorts, um, it's usually you can trace it back to one of those four things. For me, and I can't believe that I made it till I was in my mid 30s without knowing this, but when I get hungry, like those Snickers commercials are about me. I turn into the diva. I lose my freaking mind over nothing, and I can eat a granola bar and like turn back in like it's crazy to me how susceptible I am to a little bit of change in my blood sugar. But knowing
I
that, oh
agree.
my God, knowing that gives me so much control over that because I know when I'm feeling wonky, right?
Yeah,
And I can do an instant check. Am I hungry, angry, tired? I'm usually hungry. A bite of something will change that. And so one of the ways that I try to set myself up for success is always have some granola bars or a pack of crackers or something nearby wherever I'm at and whatever I'm doing. And also to empower the people around me. So everybody at the vet clinic knows if I'm being grumpy, offer me food. And
that's
most
the
of them
first
would just be
step.
like, "Yeah, do you need a granola bar?" And then I know, oh, obviously I am behaving in a way that I don't want to behave, and they recognize that. And instead of freaking out about it, be like, okay, yep, yes, I do want a granola bar, you
I
know?
love that. That's a positive. That's a
Yeah,
positive way to get you to think about, yeah, maybe I'm not responding well. I need a granola. I
right.
like that.
But I think it also gives me an opportunity to be real and flawed
Yeah.
in front of my team so they can see that,
Hmm.
I'm not trying to pretend that I'm perfect up here. I'm covered in flaws, but I'm also not trying to hide that. I think it's okay for you to recognize that I have flaws and help me see when I'm making a mistake, because that allows you to empower the people around you to do the same thing, right?
Yes.
And when we let other people know that it's okay to be flawed, you don't have to pretend to be perfect or pretend to be something you're not. Then we can be much more authentic about who we are, and I think that
Yes.
that makes everything better.
I was just going to say authenticity, I know means a lot to you and to others because you trust the
Hmm.
person who's authentic.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, you trust the person who's authentic because they're
And you think about
consistent.
every movie that you've ever seen, every book you've ever read, the main character, the hero of the story, always has flaws, and a lot of times deep flaws. And those are the people that we're drawn to, right? Like
Hmm.
the perfect person out there, like we don't have any interest in that. It's not interesting, it's not exciting, and it's not real, right? And I think somewhere deep in our brain we recognize that. Superman, who doesn't have any flaws, no character flaws, is a very shallow character, and that's not who we want to be. But the Ted Lassos of the world that have flaws but are still genuinely interested in overcoming that and becoming better and bringing everyone else up with them, like that's who we're drawn to. And I think that this notion of hiding our flaws and pretending to be perfect is flawed in itself, because that's not what anybody else is interested in. We like our
Right.
flaws.
Well, don't you feel, I know I do. I feel better when someone else is being vulnerable. It helps me even be more vulnerable. It
Yes.
draws you into a connection. You bond with the person who can actually sit there and say, I'm flawed in this area. I don't do this well. I need help. And then it opens you up to say, I've been struggling with that too. How can we do this better?
Right. And that is when you're having a real relationship with someone. Like it's
Right.
meaningful. You can change each other's lives like that instead of just sitting around, flexing muscles and trying to convince each other that you're more perfect than you are. There's no meaning in that relationship. What's the purpose of it? Like
Right.
I'd crave that deep, real connection with another person. I need that more than anything. And I don't get that making chit chat with people. I get that having conversations like this. Like this is what makes me feel alive.
Yes, me too. Me, because it's truth. It's just truth.
Hmm.
So I have one more question, and I think even the audience would be wondering how you dealt with this if you walked through it, and that would be the topic of forgiveness with your parents. I'm sure that had to be a struggle. How did you step into that?
That was also a long, slow transition for me to get from very righteous rage, as I titled the book. I certainly have all the reasons in the world to hold on to those grudges, but
Hmm.
um, the more I learn about forgiveness and what forgiveness is and what it means and what it's for, and it's for me, it's not about absolving my parents of guilt or excusing whatever they did. You
Right.
know, that has become part of it because now I understand that they were victims of their circumstance just like I was. They didn't happen to pull out of it the way that I did,
Hmm.
but maybe they didn't have the capacity to, right? But that's been going
Right.
on for generations and generations in our family. But none of that has anything to do with forgiveness, right? Forgiveness for me is about, am I going to carry this burning coal of hatred around in my chest that keeps me from growing? Or am I going to set it down and move on with my life? And I carried it around for a long time. And guess what? I didn't
Sure.
grow. Nothing changed in my life. Nothing, I just stayed in the same place because I was anchored to the ground by that resentment. And when I was able to decide that I am no longer going to hold any of this against my dad, I'm not mad at him anymore. It was what it is, and I am stronger because of it. And I can even have a little bit of gratitude for those experiences that he gave me, because I can compare my life today to my life then, and the difference is so incredibly dramatic. It's two
Mm.
different universes.
Yeah.
It's not even in the same universe, right? Whereas if I had had a great silver spoon childhood and I'm still having a silver spoon adulthood, nothing would be different, right? So I am
Right.
really grateful that I can appreciate every aspect of my life today because I have that to compare it to. But I also have, all of this stuff with my mom. My mom lived much longer than my dad. My mom lived all the way up until after the book was written. My dad died while I was still drinking in a car wreck. Um,
Oh.
so I never got to have any closure with my dad. I
Mm.
made some efforts with my mom because I went through therapy and everything else, and in the beginning I really wanted my mom to also go through this process so that she could grow and change and do all the things that I'm doing, and so that we could then maybe have a relationship of some kind, right?
Right.
And she wouldn't do that. Um, I don't. Again, her thing was like she needs God to fix her, and she couldn't rely on anything outside of that to do the job. She couldn't recognize that maybe God put a therapist in her life that could change it. She's just
Right.
unwilling to consider any of that. So she died without ever having done any of the things I wanted her to do. But that also showed me that that's me trying to control my mom. That's me trying to make her into someone that she's not, and me having expectations of her. And an expectation is just a premeditated resentment, right? So
Right.
I had to let my mom be who she is, just like I had to let my dad be who he is, and set down everything that has anything to do with that. And I had a little ceremony once I managed to get all of that straight in my head. When after I wrote the book, I was working on cover ideas, and we'll blast to the past here for a minute, but I want to say it was 1981, 1982, the Christmas right after my sister was born. Um, I got sticks for Christmas, and my sister, who was a month old, had this little pile of presents, and all I had was a bundle of sticks that my dad had gone out in the
Oh.
yard and picked up and bundled and tied a red ribbon around, and that was my punishment for whatever it was, right?
Oh.
Um, and so like that one hurt me pretty bad,
Yeah.
but um, anyway, I decided for the cover of the book that I was going to recreate that bundle of sticks. And so I made my own bundle and tied a red ribbon around it. And I built a big bonfire out in the back pasture, and I put that bundle of sticks on top. And I forgave my dad, I forgave my mom, and I set down all of my resentments and decided I was never going to pick those up again. And I just burned it all to the ground.
Mm.
And that was a very powerful moment for me. Um, my wife stood beside me and held my hand, and we watched it burn. And I didn't know what to expect in that process, but it was it was good. Like it was very. I just felt light when it was over. I was like there was all the heaviness was the burden was gone, and I let it go. And I have not picked it back up. I am absolutely ambivalent about my parents at any given moment, and on my good days, I can be filled with gratitude for the perspective that they gave me, and uh, and I feel like I try to bring that mindset with me to anybody that I have a negative encounter with now, that they're giving me an opportunity to grow, and if I carry a resentment around against them, then I am again anchoring myself to a point in time and disallowing myself to grow, and I don't want that.
Justin, you're an incredibly beautiful soul. And as I listen to you, you have such wisdom, strength, fortitude, you share with the ability to paint a picture of freedom, release, and new beginnings. That's who you
Whoop.
are.
Hmm. I appreciate the way you said that. It made me feel good.
I'm just learning so much sitting at your feet. And I think that's the power of sitting at the feet of someone who's been there, understands, didn't stay, came out, and now offers life, not only to their own soul, but to everyone around them. And that's the beauty of your life.
Well, I feel like we should be able to learn from one another, right?
Yeah,
We are intelligent creatures. We don't all have to invent the wheel. And so if I can help someone else see that you have the power to change the way that you feel, like that's a great gift to give someone.
absolutely. So, in closing, I want you to think if there's someone listening who's still in that place of pain or self-doubt about their life or because of what they have been through, if you just want to speak to their heart right now, what would you say?
I would say that you have the power to change the way that you feel about yourself. And you're probably not going to be able to do that on your own. It's going to take some help, and that's okay. That your value does not come from your ability to be tough. Like the fact that you can get punched in the nose 300 times and keep getting back up is not what makes you strong. And you don't have to keep getting punched in the nose. And generally, it's us punching ourselves in the nose, right? And we can
Mhm.
stop doing that. That is not how we prove to the world our value. Our value is in our ability to grow and to find our capacity and to try to grow to that capacity. And the only thing that holds us back is us. And once we recognize that we are both the gatekeeper and the gate and the key, then we can put all those pieces together and move past this place that we seem to be stuck in. It's all in here. Happiness is an inside job.
An inside job. I love that. So, Justin, where can people get access to your book or connect with you? And of course, I will have all your information in my show notes.
Yep, everything about me is on my author website at jboydlong.com. There's my books. I've got 8 books, I believe now. There's links
Yeah.
to my social media, blog, everything's on there.
Well, I highly recommend everyone listening connect with Justin. Truly, everyone who's listening now, if you have not been in situations like this, you know of someone who has, someone who's walking in it right now. Maybe you have a friend and you're seeing some of the demonstration in their lives of, you know what, something painful must have happened to them. Maybe this book can help them. So I want all of us to be advocates to our friends, our loved ones, to people that we meet, to tell them about Justin and his story and share about his book because this is all about bringing hope to others. Everyone's life is worthy. Everyone has value and purpose. And sometimes we just have to be the ones that reach down and pick them up and help them to begin to write their authentic story. Thank you, Transition Tribe, for being here with me again this week. Each and every week we come together, we learn about value, we learn about transformation, we learn that transitions do have a purpose and a power in our lives. So let's not avoid them. Let's not turn our face away from them, but embrace the change that's ahead of us because what's waiting for you on the other side is divine.